So on today's murder mystery
and coffee,
we're going to be talking about a Valentine's Day tragedy.
But first, let's get some coffee. Oh, we already have the coffee.
Let's take a sip of our coffee.
We're going to take a sip of our coffee.
Today we're taking it back to 2007 in Carlsbad, California, where the story starts out with the parents of Jodine Serrin. So Art and Lois Serrin, every year since the murder of their daughter, they leave their hometown of Carlsbad, California on Valentine's Day. And it's not because they're trying to go away on a romantic trip or anything, but it's because that specific day triggers horrific memories for them, because that is the day that their daughter was brutally murdered back in 2007. So Art and Lois Serrin had a 39-year-old daughter, and her name was Jodine Serrin. She suffered from mental disabilities, but despite all of her ailments, she was highly functioning, and she was able to live on her own and had her own condo in California. So while she could live by herself, she still depended on her parents to come and visit her and make sure that she was okay, drive her to her appointments. She was even active in different organizations for mentally ill people. And everybody in her area always referred to her as a sweet girl, and she was pretty low profile for the most part. So that's just the type of person that she was. So on Valentine's Day of 2007, Art and Lois decided to go for dinner and a movie. And Lois found it pretty weird that she hadn't spoke to Jodine for the entire day. It was very unusual. So she had already decided that after the movie, they were going to go to her apartment to check up on her. So movie's over, they go to her apartment to check up on her. And
so they both knocked on the door and they didn't get any reply. They had a spare key, so they opened the door and they realized that the chain latch was still on the door. They peeked in the partial opening, they noticed that the lights were still on in the apartment. So they figured that was a little bit odd, so they started to call for Jodine again. That's when they started to get a little suspicious because she still wasn't replying to them. So the dad forced the door, breaking the lock and entering the apartment. And they noticed all the lights were on in the apartment, so they started to search, going through the kitchen, the living room. But once they get to the bedroom, they walked in on a partially dressed man on top of Jodine, seemingly having a sexual act. So out of embarrassment and being flustered completely, they walked out and sat in the living room, hoping that she would come in after him and the guy would either introduce himself or leave, whatever.
yeah, there really wasn't a plan for that. They just, I mean, imagine your parents walking in, being a parent and walking in on that. You just run out, give them their privacy to like fix themselves and then come out, and then you laugh about it or whatever. Everybody, they're adults. Jodine was 39 years old. So as they waited in the living room for that to happen, they noticed that nobody was coming out. And the way that the apartment was set up was that the living room, you were unable to see the bedroom entrance or the entrance of the apartment. So after a while, they grew a little concerned and they decided to call out for her again. And when the father enters the room once again, he notices that Jodine is laid out on the bed, naked and unconscious. And he later realized when he touched her, she was cold to touch. So she had been dead this whole time. So it wasn't even like a R word that he did. It was necrophilia, because it was her corpse. Ugh. So she had been dead for a few hours. And it seems as though they didn't even realize when the man left, because like I said, the way that the apartment was set up, he must have snuck out. So that is, and I think to this day, well, no, that would happen in 2007, and I think there was...
So during the investigation, they noticed that there wasn't no forcible entry through the window, nothing through the front door. So the detectives determined that the person who committed the murder was somebody she probably knew.
Yeah. And I think they even tried running his DNA that was at the scene through the database, and didn't come up with any matches. But they did have a suspect later on. I think it was about 10 years later. They found somebody who matched, I guess, the appearance of whoever was in the room with her. and that person had killed themselves in 2011.
2011.
So
prior to that, they had a suspicion of a guy that they thought the guy looked like from the circle of the people that she hung out with disabilities. And again, the detectives confronted the guy, interviewed him, and they determined that his DNA did not match the DNA they found on the scene. And like Angela said, 10 years later, when the technology caught up, they were able to run DNA testing using modern DNA testing, and they found the match. But the problem is, the guy that they found the match for had committed suicide, like Angela said, in 2011. So the case was never
solved, and it still remains a cold case till this day, because they really don't know whether that guy that killed himself in 2011 was the actual killer or not. So that is crazy Valentine's Day story. Until this day, her parents don't stay in California. They usually leave the city because of that, because they're still, I guess, horrified by what took place that day.
Mm-hmm.
So
on every Valentine's Day, they don't even celebrate it in the same area, right? They go out of town or wherever, just because of the horrific thoughts that come through the parents' mind every Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So
that is insane.
Horrible story.
Sorry for that.
Yeah. Didn't mean to ruin your Valentine.
I know. That's awful.
But guys, if you guys hear any stories or see any stories that you guys want us to review, leave it down in the comments. Any new coffee? Best. Yeah, any cool coffee recipes from Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, send it our way. And
I drank mine.
And until next time,
peace.
Peace.
Happy Valentine's Day.
And like, subscribe. Make sure you share as well.
That too. And happy Valentine's.
And happy Valentine's.